So you're thinking of getting a suit for diving, but you're not sure exactly what style or thickness you need. In this video, I'm going to walk you through that process. How's it going, dive buddies? It is Kyle here, and welcome back to the Dive Wagon. Before we jump into today's tip, make sure you subscribe to the Dive Wagon so that you don't miss out on any other awesome scuba content. Today's video, we're going to be talking about wetsuits, specifically a few things to keep in mind when you're buying one. The main question that people are asking is, what suit is best for me? What suit do I need? They go into a shop and they just want to buy a suit. But in order to answer that question, we have to answer actually a few other questions, because what works for me may not be exactly what works for you. So we'll start with the question of, is this going to be a suit that is going to be used for cold water diving or warm water diving? Meaning, is this going to be used in areas like Canada or the UK or kind of places where the water tends to be pretty cold? I kind of like to view this as anything really north of Florida. Or is this going to be used in kind of warmer Caribbean destinations, places where the sun's always shining, where there's lots of sand and fish and corals, that type of thing? You also can't answer both. Well, I guess technically you can answer yes to both, but that just means you're gonna get two suits. There isn't a magical suit yet that's gonna work for both extremes. Okay, so cold or warm? Let's start with cold. This is gonna be kind of anything from a 7mm suit up, 8 mil, and is even gonna include semi-dries and dry suits. So for the 7mm suit and the kind of 8mm suit, that category, you're gonna be limited eventually to the water temperature. So if you're only planning on diving in kind of peak summer season, diving in, say, Canada and some of the Great Lakes, that type of thing, a 7mm, 8mm, those type of suits are going to work just perfect for you. But the one hurdle that you're going to come by is that, towards the end of the season, the surface air is going to get a lot colder, a lot windier. You're going to get snow, stuff like that. So when you're sitting on the surface after your dive, that's when it's going to get a little bit brutal, because you don't kind of have any sort of wind protection. If you were to have a dry suit kind of towards that end of the season, then you're going to have a little bit of a wind barrier, kind of for lack of a better term. So a semi-dry is kind of right smack down the middle between those two categories of the 7-8 mil wetsuits and the dry suit category. But it's right down the middle because you're going to get a little bit more warmth, closer to what you would with a dry suit, but not quite as much, because you're still going to get wet. But what's happening is that the suit now is restricting the water flow through the suit, ultimately keeping you warmer. Now, when it comes to getting a dry suit, it ends up kind of not being more of a question of if you're going to get a dry suit, but kind of ends up being a question of when you end up buying that dry suit, assuming that you are now regularly diving in some significantly colder waters. So if you see that being sooner than later, then I kind of like to view it that I would rather take that $400 or $500 that you might spend on a 7 or 8 mil suit and put that towards the $13 or so that's going to be the dry suit at the end of the day. Because personally, once I got into my White's Aqualung dry suit, I never went back and I never touched my 7 mil wetsuit that I was using prior to that. Now, I do have dive buddies that detest their dry suits. The minute the water gets warm enough, they switch back to their 7 mils, because true, 7 mils, 8 mils, you are going to get significant more mobility. It's just a different feel altogether than diving in a dry suit. But that being said, what I find with the dry suits is that you're going to be able to cover the entire season with the suit, and depending on the temperatures of the water, you're going to be able to change what you wear underneath. So if it's a warmer kind of mid-season dive, you're going to be able to wear lighter undergarments. If it's towards the end of the season, or you're doing some deeper kind of colder areas, then you just wear some thicker undergarments. All right, so let's switch to warm water suits. Now, this can be sometimes more challenging because there are so many more options. You can get things from rash guards to streamers to 1 mils, 2 mils, 3 mils, 5 mils, and all sorts of branded things in between, but they're all gonna serve a purpose for you. So here's the question that we need to ask as we go through this process is, how cold do you get? Are you the kind of person that just emits heat, or are you the kind of person that's always shivering, that always has to layer up, and no matter what you do, you're always cold? This is gonna play an important role. So let's start down at the thinnest possible options. And at the bottom, we've got rash guards. Now, these are a thin kind of polyester spandex mix. They are perfect, inexpensive solutions for snorkelers, because what they're gonna do is now they're gonna give you some protection from the sun. Not so much warmth, but protection from the sun. Now, if you're someone who just emits heat all the time, no matter what you do when you're down there diving, a rash guard can sometimes just be a quick, easy way to have a little bit of protection on your skin, on your arms, so that when you come up on the surface, your back and whatnot is protected from the sun. Next, we have suits that fall into the 1mm category, and these are suits that I also like to recommend for people who get warm relatively quickly, because the emphasis on this isn't so much on the warmth that the suit is going to give you, but that now you're going to get slightly more protection, kind of abrasion protection. You know, you've got coverage on your elbows, on your knees, and should you accidentally brush up against a jellyfish, or, you know, a current kind of slowly pushes you into a coral, you've got a little bit more protection than your average rash guard would give you. Next, we kind of have the middle of the ground when it comes to warm water suits. These are suits that you're going to kind of see dive shops offer as rentals when you go down to different Caribbean or warm water destinations. And these are suits that kind of range in the 2.5 to 3mm thickness. These suits are kind of going to offer a middle of the ground warmth, you know, great for your average Caribbean destination, assuming you're going to do kind of 1 or 2 dives a day. Now, that final jump of thickness when it comes to warm water suits is going to be that 4.5 to 5mm thickness. And when you try these on and you touch them, they are going to feel significantly thicker than their 1mm cousins, but they do have a place. If you answered yes to our previous question of, are you kind of the person that's shivering all the time, you know, in those pool sessions, you just couldn't compose yourself during the training, then a 5mm might be the answer to your problems. This could also be a good suit for you if you're planning on doing a lot of consecutive dives for consecutive days, and you're just planning on packing your trip with as many dives as possible. A 5mm is going to be a great option for you, because during that time your core temperature is going to drop, and, you know, if you have a thinner suit, it may not be able to bounce back as quickly. So by dive 2 or 3, you're still cold even in your 3mm or your 1mm, no matter what you try to do. With a thicker suit like this, you're always going to be able to, if you're warmer, be able to cool yourself down. You can always flush the suit, kind of open up the neck, let some colder water in. But if you're down there and you're cold, there really isn't anything that you can do that's going to warm you up long term to enjoy the rest of your dive, other than, of course, end the dive. So if some of those things might sound like you, then the 5mm might be a suit that's gonna work. Now remember, guys, you can combine suits. So there are hooded vests out there that you can wear underneath your normal wetsuit. So if you already own a wetsuit that just isn't maybe quite cutting it in terms of warmth, then adding a hooded vest or something like that is going to give you a little bit more thickness to the suit and give you a little bit more warmth. And remember, guys, you also lose heat from your head, your hands, and your feet. So things like hoods, gloves, and boots are also good things to keep in mind as you're deciding where you're going to end up diving. And there you have it, guys. I hope some of these questions and some of these thoughts maybe helped you walk you through that process. Of course, if you've got any kind of specific questions or any other questions that I didn't cover, leave us a note in the comment section below. I'll be more than happy to help you out with some of the specifics. I will also leave in the description below a few links to some of the suits that my wife and I use that we love, as well as some other suits that I would highly recommend. Thanks again for watching, guys. We will see you next time, and happy diving.